My name is Dr. Lauren Costine, and I'm happy to be here today to talk about a few different psychological concepts. The first one I thought we'd talk about is called dealing with your shadow. So the shadow is a Jungian concept that a lot of you may have heard of. It's this idea that Jung came up with where we put all those feelings about ourselves that we don't like or we prefer not to deal with, like hatred and sadness and anger and envy and jealousy, and also the internalized messages from the outside world that we're not good enough, or the homophobic messages that we get, and messages that heterosexuality is the only acceptable form of being with someone you love. All of those kind of messages that you get either from your family or from society that are not okay to have, we put in this place called the shadow. And then it gets outside of our awareness. We don't pay attention to that, but they actually are still sitting there. It's like we still feel these feelings, but we don't want to deal with them. A lot of this has to deal with shame. And another concept called toxic shame. We feel so much shame for having these negative feelings that they go into the shadow so that we don't have to deal with it. Well, it comes out sideways in other ways. We can end up being angry when we don't mean to be. We can end up being difficult in relationships when we don't want to be. We can end up doing all kinds of things that come out of the unconscious that are actually those parts of ourselves that we have put into the shadow. So the paradoxical situation about this, though, is if we deal with the shadow, if we actually face these difficult feelings and we start to deal with them, we get to the actual really good stuff. So the good stuff about ourselves, our potential, our gifts, our talents, are also hidden in the shadow too, but they're hidden underneath the difficult feelings that we're trying to ignore. So the more that you excavate the difficult, ugly, nasty, icky feelings, the more you have access to your talents and your gifts and your potential and joy and happiness and feelings of internal liberation. So how do we deal with it? Well, I really suggest that you talk to a trained psychological professional who knows how to work with this concept called the shadow. And then they get into the trauma, which means talking about, getting into what happened in your childhood. What were your parents like to you? What was it like with your siblings or your peers? Do you have big traumas, what we call big T? Were you sexually abused? Were you physically abused? Did you have some severe tragedy in your childhood that would have affected you? Those are big T's. Or do you have little T's, which is like shaming or covert incest or being humiliated or being told your negative feelings, anger, sadness, jealousy, things like that, selfishness are not okay. Those are all put back inside, and we hide those. So someone who's trained to look for these and help you dig into them will liberate them. Now, I'm not saying that this process is easy, and I'm not saying that you're gonna go into therapy and it's gonna be this immediate relief. But if you are willing to do the hard work, if you're willing to go in there and sit with your anger and sit with your sadness and sit with your internalized phobias and sit with shame and with a safe person that knows how to let you sit with those and deal with them, they will eventually be healed. You will be released of those feelings, and then you will have a lot of authentic sense of peace and fulfillment and happiness and joy that's real and doesn't go away over time. So that is my suggestion for dealing with the shadow. I think that it's an extremely important thing to deal with when you want to do inner work and become your authentic self. It's one of the key pieces to really finding out who you are and being able to find and love who you really are. Thank you.